You mentioned the war in Ukraine, and of course the crisis there has had its effects here, the arrival of so many refugees. There was much made of the fact that something less than 50 Ukrainians could not find a bed and were temporarily on the floor or on a mattress or whatever in Dublin Airport. That facility to house 200 in Dublin Airport temporarily has been opened, so the short-term problem resolved. We're hearing about army barracks being used, maybe up to 500 beds could be found. There is a suspicion, though, that we're doing more than our share of the heavy lifting.
So if you would look at the figures that look at where Ireland stands in terms of number of people who arrived into our country as a share of our overall population, we're broadly in the middle. So we are taking in a lot of people into our country, and we are, but there's no evidence to say that we're at the top of the pack.
No, but we're adding, say, so far, maybe 1% to our population.
So if you look at the figures in relation to that, that is the case. So if you look at the number of people who arrived into our country due to the war in Ukraine, it's approximately 55,000 people, and they are fleeing a war. And we, I believe, are responding back to that in a way that is so appropriate and generous and does reflect the values that our country holds dear. I do believe it is important that when we are dealing with the consequences of the first war of scale to happen in Europe since World War II, that we respond back as well as we can to it, which we are doing.
And I think there is a goodwill towards Ukrainians because people see the fix they're in. The goodwill,
see the horrific situations that they're fleeing.
Sure, and horrific. No place to go back to, their houses destroyed.
I mean, whatever challenges we face, and we face so many challenges, I think we are all aware that we are dealing with people who are still predominantly women and children who are coming to our country with worried that their homes are going to be blown up.
And there is an ambition.
Their son or their father could lose their life in a war.
There's an ambition also for people to earn their own living. Now, I know there is talk of tweaking the arrangements whereby if people do get a job, that they then contribute in some way to their accommodation, their meals and so on. Where do we stand with that at the moment?
So we are examining that. And the reason why we're examining this is if you look at the figures regarding participation in our economy, and participation in our schools and universities of Ukrainians who've come to our country very recently, they're very good. So out of the 55,000 people that have come to Ireland, roughly 10,000 of them are now in work, 15,000 of them are in our schools, and 5,000 are now in higher and further education, which is a remarkable tribute both to them and also to the work that we've all done together. And one of the things that we do want to look at, particularly given the desire that Ukrainian people have to work and to earn a living and to look after themselves, is what's the appropriate arrangements if they're then in a position of work. Yeah. We haven't made a decision on it yet, but it's something we do want to look at.
Now, then there are the other people who are the international asylum seekers, and there is the impression that Ireland in some cases has been a soft touch. I mean, Georgia is not a country which you should be fleeing from. There's no war there, and yet people are seeking asylum here. Many people arrive at Dublin Airport having got on a plane with ID papers, because you can't get on without one, and emerge somehow into our system without any identification papers.
And we will fulfil and do fulfil our international obligations regarding those who come seeking asylum in our country. But we are not a soft touch.
We appear to have been.
Well,
we're now getting tight on the Georgians.
So I think what is happening, Pat, is because of the situation that is changing in Europe and across the world, in relation to the number of people that are now migrating, the number of people that are now moving, it is affecting the figures of the people who are seeking refuge in Ireland. I would acknowledge that. But all we are doing in relation to matters like those who are seeking either refuge or asylum here in Ireland is fulfilling obligations that we do have.
Whatever happened to the Dublin Agreement, whereby, and it was signed off in Dublin, whereby wherever you landfall within the EU, that's where you stay?
And what we will do is take all the steps that we can to make sure we deliver against that agreement while expecting others to do it. But what is happening is that as all over Europe, we are seeing millions of people move due to the impact of a war. All of these systems are under strain, whether it's Ireland, whether it's Italy, whether it's other countries, because of the millions of people that are now fleeing a war and the impact that that puts on our systems
Yeah.
in total.
But the point being that if 1,000 people come here who don't have a right really to come here under any international convention, that's 1,000 less beds for Ukrainians.
And this is why we need to ensure that we are fulfilling our commitments, but that we're dealing with this whole issue now in a proper and a fair way. I believe we are. And of course, I anticipate and understand that at a time in which housing is already such a challenge for us, the government is expected to do all we can to provide new and alternative accommodation. And we are looking at all means possible to do this.